Welcome back to Was It That Good, the series where we look at world-renowned artists' best albums, re-review them and decide if they were actually as good as people made out at the time. And today we're here with Eminem, the Marshall Mathers LP.
What an album this is. This was released back in the year 2000, so a very long time ago, 25 years ago now, and it's 18 songs, an hour and 12 minutes long, and this LP sold 1.78 million copies in the first week of sales, which is absolutely insane, and that makes it one of the fastest selling albums in the whole of the charts in the US.
I would say Eminem was already pretty big up to this point with the Slim Shady LP, but this really catapulted him to an entirely different world-renowned level. And we'll start off with the first track, which isn't really a track. It's an introduction, public service announcement.
You don't expect anything less from Eminem. It's just giving an idea of what the album is, how crass it's going to be, you know, a little edgelord, him coming in, and yeah, not much more needs to be said about it.
So we'll go on to the first proper track, which is Kill You.
Woo! This is one of the rawest, most unfiltered, vulgar hip-hop tracks I think ever, to be honest with you. The lyrics that he comes with are just phenomenally awful.
I think to kick off the album, I really appreciated the instrumental on this one. It was simple but really fun. Instantly straight in there, Dre beat, unreal stuff, and the bars were just clean throughout. It was like, oh, this is Eminem. Oh, this is what we're gonna get here.
Here he is, he's back. And the "you don't wanna fuck with Shady," that part is just amazing. There's so many hooks throughout this album, and it makes you realize how good M actually is at hooks. He is low-key, other than a couple of other artists, one of the best hook writers, I think.
One of the best hook writers is just a strange line. We'll go on to the next track, which is Stan.
Whew, featuring Dido. What more needs to be said about this? This is a seminal track. This is the reason the word Stan exists, and a lot of people don't realise that this is where it came from.
I'm wondering how many times you can go woo at the start of each track. But no, for me, this is one of the best rap tracks of all time in history. Absolutely love it. The feature works amazingly, but also it really shows M's storytelling ability. The fact that he's switching between characters throughout this song. The first couple times you listen to this, it's actually scary and weird. And all the different effects that are going on, the rain in the background, the writing on the page, it just builds this intense story in your head.
It proper sucks you in and kind of takes you on a little journey. And then you even get the perspective from Stan, who is obviously Eminem's biggest fan. And then you get the perspective of Eminem writing, and at the end when he goes, "Come to think of it, it was you, damn." And then that whole punchline is
One thing that did kind of irritate me about this song that I picked up on a few years ago now is, for some reason in the mix, the scribbling of the writing on the piece of paper is really loud. And I'm sorry if this has destroyed the song a little bit for anyone listening, but go re-listen to this track and you will definitely hear that a million times. It's like
a little kid playing with his crayons.
Oh, it really, really angers me.
An interesting one with this was at the Grammys in 2001, which is a year after this album was released. He actually did this with Elton John. He did a version of this live with Elton John, and it was kind of like a middle finger to all the people that was giving him the homophobic and, giving him all these accusations. He was like, well, Elton John is co-signing me, so if you want to call me homophobic, maybe I'm not in that realm.
I'll let you cover the next part of the album, which is another skit called Paul.
I think this is just short, sweet, simple. You can't say much more than that. It's him saying, are you being real? Is this really what you want from this album? I can't believe you're making me put this out. But we move off that onto Who Knew, which starts with the I never knew I do. Which again, just so catchy.
I thought this was a fantastic instrumental again. Very West Coast style, very Dr. Dre, especially in comparison to a lot of the other tracks on this album. I thought this was relatively calm again. Really liked it.
Yeah, there's a lot of ad-libs in this track as well that we haven't heard as many of during this album. And it makes me wonder what happened to ad-libs. It's like a lost art form that nobody really moves in on that much anymore.
You got Playboy Carti going rah, rah, in the background of his songs.
Usually it's just and stuff like that. It's just noises. Whereas this is like him adding extra words in, or doing a little shh, or the sound of a spray can or anything like that. I just feel like it's a lost art form and something that needs to be brought back to hip-hop because it adds a level of fun to the track.
Another skit is up next, Tim. Steve Berman.
This adds some context to the whole, and again, just explains how crazy this album is. The skits throughout this album are just kind of reminders that what you're listening to is actually crazy, and the fact that if somebody were to try and release songs of this caliber nowadays, maybe it would not have the same reception that it did back then.
Oh yeah, definitely not. Some of the things that have been said in these skits, and to be honest, just how weird and stupid they are, that wouldn't fly in most rap albums nowadays. But we'll go on to the next proper track, which is The Way I Am.
Raw, rough, and ready.
But you've been coming out with
that's me on a Friday night.
You've been coming out with some wild shit already in this.
There's so much energy in this track, and you can really feel M's angst come out as he's going through it. And you know, he's shouting, and there's anger in his voice that I don't think many people are very good at getting across in tracks. There's some, you can hear like sad tracks from artists, happy tracks from artists. Angry tracks do come around every once in a while, but in terms of actually hearing that visceral anger, I feel like M just nails it perfectly.
I quite liked re-listening to this in a review sense because it made me see the track in a different light. With the instrumental felt a little bit darker, kind of give that scary, spooky church vibe. And then the bars were quite introspective about public opinion on Eminem and how people view him. And it was just unique to listen to it in that sense. I didn't really take it in that way before. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When we listen to it in the idea of, okay, I'm going to have to dig into every part of this song, it gives you a new appreciation for how the song's actually built and the structure that's put into place, because it's not just the lyricism and the flows that are on this album, it's the beats as well. Everything throughout this album is like perfected to the top level.
And next up is one of Eminem's biggest songs, one of rap music's biggest songs, in The Real Slim Shady.
This is the first Eminem song that I ever heard, and I imagine it was a lot of people's first Eminem songs that they ever heard. And after I heard this, I was immediately hooked, and little child Timmy was like, "Oh my god, this is I've never heard anything like this before. I want more."
Maybe little child Timmy listening to this explains why you are the way you are. But this was good because it was so good from a musical and rappability point of view, as in Eminem's ability, but it was also just proper fun to listen to. I think anyone who isn't even a fan of the genre would put this on and want to bob their head along, have a little dance. It's just sick.
It's super catchy, and also the music video that goes with it is just burnt into my retinas. Like, I watched it so many times, and it was around the time that MTV was massive, so everybody was seeing the music video. The part where he's spitting in the onion rings and he's doing donuts in the parking lot. I just remember it all so well, and I think this track is arguably one of the goated rap tracks.
I completely agree. We've got RBX and Sticky Fingers on the next track, which is Remember Me. But will you remember the track?
Yeah, I remember the track. The beat on this is absolutely crazy, and I would say it's probably one of my favorite beats off the entire album. The low end is just filthy.
I really didn't appreciate the way in which the features delivered the bars. I don't know why, it kind of threw me off. I felt like the album was on one vibe and they came in. Maybe it was just their voice. You know, like sometimes you just don't mix well with a certain artist. I actually thought that this was kind of a lower point in a very good run of tracks.
Oh, I thought both the features on this went pretty hard, to be honest.
I didn't enjoy it.
I think they both definitely knew this was going to be a big thing, and they had to pull out all the stops to deliver some crazy bars.
But it was like there was no Eminem till the last minute. The outro of the track was just straight up shouting. It just
that I think the Remember Me shit. Remember Me. I really love that.
It kind of ruined the album flow for me.
Oh, okay. I thought the Remember Me leads nicely into the next track, because it gives you a little bit of goosebumps, and it's getting a bit serious, and then all of a sudden it goes fun when it jumps straight into I'm Back, which I would say is probably the nicest transition on the album.
I mean, it is back to form. This was another big banger from M. I just think that a lot of the tracks on this album you can look at and talk about how good they are, but to most rappers and most artists, these would be the best tracks they've ever released. And we're here kind of comparing it to The Way I Am and The Real Slim Shady. So it's a bit like, am I really hyping it up enough? But no, I'm Back is a great song.
It's crazy how many of these tracks would, like you're saying, would be classed as just album throwaway tracks. But I could give an argument for every single track off this album to be a single and for it to do amazingly well, because like, can you release an album? How many singles can you release from an album? Because is it all of them?
Yeah, but like, for example, I'm Back is better than anything Eminem's done on his last two albums.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And we're not even talking about it like a highlight, but we'll move off it anyway. On to Marshall Mathers.
This is the first time on this album that we hear M's singing voice, which I really like. I like it when rappers throw in a little bit of singing. I like it when Kanye does it, albeit Kanye isn't the greatest. But M's singing is it's like he's putting the effort in, but he doesn't want to fully commit to it. You know what I mean? He's still like, no, I'm cool. I'm not going to do a full singy voice, but I'm going to try my best.
I like this. It felt a little bit more personal in terms of the actual content of the lyrics in the song. I quite liked the battle that was going on between Marshall and Slim Shady, and that's something that happens throughout the album, and I think he really nails it. When you compare it to more modern tracks where it's a bit like, oh, I'm uncancelable, you're going to try cancel me, Slim Shady. That's kind of the battle that happens now. I much preferred the theming of him saying, oh no, look, there's this fucked up side of me, and then there's this more emotional side, and that came out in this track.
Yeah, it's a nice change of pace for the album as a whole. It slowly builds up with the bars in the first verse, and it gets more and more aggressive as it goes throughout, but it's like, look, I am a human at the end of the day. I know the stuff that I'm saying is crazy, but I am a person. And the instrumental on this is also fantastic, and there's one little reference in here that I wanted to mention, which was the reference to LFO's Summer Girls, because M just hates boy bands for some reason. So he was throwing shade at them. He was throwing shades at the New Kids on the Block when he says, the New Kids on the Block suck a lot of dick. Boy girl group makes me sick, whatever he says. That's a reference to the New Kids on the Block had a bunch of hits. Chinese food makes me sick, which is LFO's bars. So it's just bro was just coming up with ways to insult people and including them in his own track and doing it so seamlessly that I think a lot of people wouldn't have even realised.
See, this is what you get here. If you're an Eminem fan, we've done a few videos on Eminem, so remember to hit like and subscribe. And Tim will deliver you with all the Easter eggs that I would never have known about. Feel like I might have heard this before and I still don't know about it. So hit like and subscribe before we go on to the next song, which is another skit in Ken Kaniff, your boy.
Oh, this skit makes me feel physically ill. It makes me feel sick when it's like a horrible ASMR video. You know what I mean? It's just gross, and it's actually a diss against ICP because he's talking about Shaggy 2 Dope and Violent J sucking Ken Kaniff's dick, and then halfway through they call Ken Eminem, and Ken's like, "I'm not fucking get the fuck out of here."
Em really likes talking about sucking.
He does.
Is that his like thing? Maybe he's doing that in the background.
Maybe that's what was happening.
That's what maybe an Eminem party looks like.
Maybe ICP was sucking M's dick at a Diddy party. M was never at a Diddy party. He fucking hates him. That never happened.
All right, sure. We'll go on to Drug Ballad anyway. Drug Ballad, I thought that this had another great instrumental. I've mentioned that a few times. Dre on this album. Is this the best Dre's ever been as a producer? Maybe it is. I think probably.
There's a couple of other, like The Chronic and stuff like that, 2000, those ones that are really good as well. But I think this is definitely up there in his top 5, if not top 3 projects that he's worked on. And the beat in this, there's that little noise, which is the sound of the bottle when it's hollow and you swallow it all, wallow and drown in your sorrow. That is the little...
I've just got to kind of commend you for your delivery there. That was really impressive, like straight off the bat.
Yeah.
But no, this track for me, more of a dark feel and just another fantastic song to kind of get towards the closing section of the album.
Yeah, it's such a simple beat and such a simple instrumental, but it works so well.
And next, the track named off one of the biggest horror films of the 80s, is it? Did it come out in the 80s? There was a 2005 remake, which was banging anyway, and that's Amityville.
Featuring Bizarre. Oh my goodness, I miss Bizarre. He's not been around much recently. He dropped a pretty cool project recently, though, and he is one of the grossest rappers that's going. He even makes Eminem's lyrics look tame in comparison, talking about his grandma sucking his dick and he doesn't come. Like, it's weird shit. And with a name like Bizarre, it kind of works.
I feel like for the last 3 tracks you've mentioned sucking dick, which is just
it's
crazy.
It's not me that's
like,
not
bro, you need to chill.
I'm not. It's
bro,
the
why,
songs.
Why is it always these lyrics that you pick up on?
It's the songs, bro.
Sure,
it's the songs.
Sure, but again, another really dark feeling song, which you would have expected given the title of the track. I think maybe we've kind of overplayed that a little bit now, though. I think as much as Eminem's good at doing this and saying vulgar things and kind of putting a vulgar track together, maybe I'm a little bit bored at this point of the album of just being as controversial as humanly possible for the sake of it.
Yeah, I'd say this is probably one of the tracks that people would class as a lesser track on this album. And I think that would be fair to say that this is probably, again, none of the tracks are bad, but in comparison to some of the behemoths that we've had before this is definitely a weaker track. But I do think that Bizarre's verse is very, very good.
Speaking of behemoths, on the next track, we have some of the best features available to man with Snoop, Dre, and Eminem all on one track.
Insane. We've got Exhibit and Nate Dogg in there as well. And this is just an iconic track with the features, everybody came with fire. And this is possibly one of the only times that Eminem has features where he doesn't outshine them. And they actually match up with his skill. They match up with his ability. Everybody's come with straight fire, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, everyone's at their peak at this point. And I would say bar Dido and Stan, this is definitely the best features of the album.
100%, yeah. I think there's not much more that needs to be said about it because just the features alone speak volumes for the track. So we'll move off it onto Kim.
Real angry.
Real angry. This fucking track. The storytelling on this is insane. I've never heard anybody do anything that was close to what is covered on this track.
Do you think it was better than Stan? In terms of storytelling ability?
I think, yeah, in terms of actually getting involved into it and like the kind of visceral connection you have between imagery in your head versus what's actually being said. I do think that Kim paints a better picture.
And that was the debate in my head because it's like you kind of get one of those storytellers at the start and towards the end. I wasn't sure which one I preferred, but I agree with you. It's crazy all over the place, a lot of emotion coming through in it. And the way that it, as you said, paints that picture is crazy.
The first time you hear this track, you genuinely think like, what the hell is going on now? Because there's bits when he's going a bit psychotic and he's doing the hey, you remember when we were happy and fun and all that? Yeah, well, fuck it. And he just goes off the rails. He's like flip-flopping. He's clearly having like a psychotic break close enough. He's talking about, doing horrible things to people. And there's no comparison for this track, I don't think.
And I thought it was really weird how we went into the next track, Under the Influence, featuring D12, and it went from that kind of deep storytelling just to a kind of silly vibes track.
Yeah, and I quite like that he's done that with the album, though, because I think it makes it work nicer, where he's like, okay, here's some serious, horrible shit, and now here's a bit of fun. Let's just dial it back and have some fun.
I would say it was quite nice to see D12 on the record, but also, for me, this was one of the low points of the album.
Again, it would be a track that somebody could class as a lesser track. I mean, we get another bizarre feature on here. R.I.P. to Proof. R.I.P. to Proof.
R.I.P. to Proof, but why are you being such a politician when I feel like you don't want to say, no, maybe it is a low point. You're like, some people may think that this isn't as good as other tracks.
Because I don't. I love this track.
But would
I
you
love
not
all
say
the tracks.
It's a low point still in comparison?
It's a lower point. I wouldn't call it a low point. It's lower because nothing is lower than an 8 on this whole album. In terms of tracks, if I was to give all of them a rating, none of them would drop beneath an 8 out of 10.
You're a criminal.
Why? I think that's fair. I just really like this album. I don't think that's a problem at all. On this track,
you really didn't get what I was trying to do there, did you?
Oh, because you wanted to. Oh, you wanted to segue. Shit, I was still talking about this. I'm sad to see that there wasn't more from D12. I just wanted to throw that in there. It's sad that they ended when they did. It's cool that they're still trying to continue nowadays, but they're not what they were. But I'll let you segue again and see if I get it this time.
You're a criminal for ruining that segue.
Oh, a criminal!
That was fantastic.
Like the next track, because I'm a criminal. That's what he does to start it, and he scares you a little bit. I remember the first time hearing it and go, whoa, who's a criminal?
They got me.
You?
They got
who's
me.
A criminal?
No, this was a good way to end the album. Kind of similar to how it started, where there's some clean bars. It's a great instrumental. It's just another good Eminem song. I feel like I've kind of run out of things to say. The lyrical ability's there. The beat is amazing. It's just fantastic.
What else can you say? He's just a glaze fest at this point. There's a little story bit in the middle where he's going up to a shop and he's getting out the car and he's going to go rob it. And we never actually find out what happens after he shoots the shopkeeper and runs out the shop. But then on Marshall Mathers' LP2, there is a parking lot skit where it actually completes this story. So the skit that we hear in this song is completed with him running away. He's running away from the police. He's jumping over fences. And in the end, he kills himself.
Yeah, I really don't count that as part of this album, though. You know what this is like? This is like
it's a cool little callback.
It's like now when you're watching a Marvel film and you have to have seen Loki season 2, episode 4 to know what's happening.
It's like Leonardo DiCaprio, like, ooh. It's one of them moments where you're like, oh, I know that, I've heard that. It's cool. It was cool that he continued MMLP into MMLP2 in some ways. It was obviously a continuous project, but it was cool to hear that he made those references.
But let's take this album as one. Tim, give me some thoughts on the album as a whole.
Place yourself in the year 2000, okay? So wait, it's not the year 3000, the year 2000. You're about 1,000 years too late there. And just think about the words that he's saying and how he's delivering them, and even the flow that he's got. There is nothing comparable, even for the next 10 years, that can reach the levels that this album reached.
Yeah, I'd say it's two masters of the craft combining to create a masterpiece. Like, obviously, we can glaze M all day, and you know that his lyrical ability and songwriting ability is on show to a crazy level in this, but also Dre's beat making just switches it up multiple times throughout the record and really puts a shine on a lot of M's tracks. Because as good as Eminem is, you can see in recent projects when there's different producers working with him, it doesn't end in the same result, whereas this is just like banger after banger.
I mean, even when he's working with Dre nowadays, it still doesn't hit the same as this album does and other projects from around this time. So it is unfortunate to see that, but at least we have this little time capsule that we can go back to and go, you know what, this was a phenomenal piece of work. So let's get around to the question, was it that good? Because I would say undoubtedly yes.
Oh, 100%. It was unreal from start to finish, pretty much. Maybe the latter half of the album dropped off a little bit, but it was still certainly, as a project, more than good, unreal.
Absolutely fantastic. So let's go into the ratings. What would you give this album out of 10?
Oh, it's difficult because I know you're just going to absolutely bombard it. I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10. I think that the majority of the album was fantastic. There was a few low points for me, a few tracks, especially a few of the features weren't great in my opinion. And I know that maybe at the time they would have been a little bit more fitting and bigger names, and maybe that style of rap was more in focus. But for me, a few features let it down a little bit, but still an 8.5 is an incredible rating and puts it in one of my favorite rap albums of all time. How about yourself?
This is the only time that I will ever give this rating. I think there's maybe one or two other albums that I will give this rating to, and by just saying that, you already know it's coming. It's a 10 out of 10. It's a solid 10 out of 10. I do think this is a somewhat flawless album. I'd be hard pressed to find anything in this album where I would go, oh yeah, that was a bit of a flop. Like you were saying earlier, you must be able to admit certain things. Genuinely one of my favorite projects of all time.
So I see what you're saying. So 10 out of 10 means it's all amazing. Mm-hmm. Would you say that D12 feature was amazing?
Yes. Yeah,
amazing.
Because it was D12. Yeah, I think it was fantastic. Yeah, it was amazing.
Is
and
that
plus
just
we got
because
D12 with proof.
Is that not just because you're caught up in the lore, though?
I mean, maybe so, but it's subjective, and I think it's a 10 out of 10. I think the whole album is fantastic. I don't think there's anything on this album that is a miss. I think everything was crafted perfectly. Everybody comes with fire on the features. Everybody knows this is a big project. Everybody delivers what they need to deliver, and I'll hear nothing less than a 10 out of 10.
Well, if you thought this video was a 10 out of 10, then make sure you remember to hit like and subscribe. We've actually got a series called Was It That Bad, where we have jumped into, what was it, Revival?
Revival, yeah. So we reviewed Eminem's Revival album, which is perceived to be one of his worst. And we kind of like went through that to figure out if it actually was that bad. So if you're interested in Eminem, go give that one a check out.
We'll leave it at the end of this video. Hit like and subscribe. Peace.
Thank you very much.